Now let us discuss why do we need moral philosophy, what is its aims and objectives. So if you look at the very objective of any philosophy, whether it is the political philosophy or moral philosophy, they aims to provide a kind of society or a condition or a set of norms that would enable the individual to lead a good life. And definition of good life will vary, but all human beings want to live a good, dignified and happy life. Now how to lead that life, in what kind of society that life is possible, what kind of state structure should be there, these are some of the reflections that we have seen from the classical Greek times in Plato, Aristotle, Machiavelli, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau and now Kant and many other thinkers that is there in the course. They are all engaged in answering this question, that in which kind of society individual life would be more dignified, more equal, more just and happy. So the primary objective of philosophy is to provide us a set of moral laws or principle that will enable us to lead a good, happy and dignified life. So all human beings across the context universally want to lead a life which would be good, happy and dignified. The search for those principles or norms to lead a life of eudaimonia, if you remember our first few lectures on Greek philosopher, was there in the Greek philosophers writings such as Socrates, Plato and Aristotle. And particularly if you focus and recall our lecture on Aristotle and his views on judgment, you will know that how he was also searching for a code of law, so did Plato and Socrates and other thinkers that we have discussed in this course so far. They all search for those codes or the principles which would enable the human being to lead a life which would be the life of eudaimonia or a happy life, dignified life. So particularly if you look at Aristotle writings on ethics, he combines the general and the universal concept of ethics in contrast to Platonic. There is a kind of absolute knowledge or absolute forms of ethics or morality in Plato. In contrast to that, in Aristotle we find a kind of combination of the universal or the abstract notion of ethics with the practical context of the community, and it is the combination of the universal with the particular that human beings developed correct political judgment. So in Aristotle we have this combination of general and universal concept of ethics with the practical context of human life and the community. And according to Aristotle, human beings develop the ability to correct judgment. Judgment is something that guides our action. We subject our life to our judgment and then realize the potentialities or the full potentialities of our life dependent on the correct judgment. And the correct judgment requires first the understanding of the general or the universal code of ethics and also the practical context of human life or community. So according to Aristotle, human beings develop the ability to correct judgment by living among the free and equal members. So life in the polis or life in the city state or the public life is the best life that enables the individual to realize his true potentialities. That is by living among the others who are equal and free in the community. So the correct judgment according to Aristotle is the outcome of associational life of individual with others who are free and equal in the community. Kant in modern times provides us a more comprehensive and thorough account of universal morality, and also that morality should be guided by the practical reason. So the Kantian categorical imperative guides the practical reason, how individuals should act in a practical given context. So the moral laws in Kant's philosophy have transcendental characteristic, and this transcendental characteristic in Kantian morality is that even when they act in their particular context, they transcend it to act in the principle which they want at the same time to become universal. That means the other person, without any consideration to the context, should act according to the same principle which that particular person follow in that particular context. So, there is a kind of transcendental ethics or transcendental characteristic of Kantian morality. Now, let us discuss this question, why do we need morality and why moral codes applies to the human being or the human species. So, the reason for that is that we are moral agent. And what does it mean to be a moral agent? It means that we have a sense of justice or a sense of discretion which tells us what is good or what is bad, what is desirable or what is undesirable. So, there is a kind of intuitive, innate sense, and this is there in the social contract tradition thinkers as well. Even in the state of nature where there is no society, no association, and yet human beings have a sense of morality or a sense of justness. And this, if you recall Aristotle, again, that human beings are not God nor beast. So, unlike God, they do not know everything, or unlike beast, it is also not true that they do not know anything. So, we know something, but there are the domains of life which we do not know. So, human beings have a peculiar situation of existence where they have a sense, but they are also prone to making a lot of immoral acts or undesirable behavior. Whole moral philosophy tries to provide us a set of norms which would make human life more perfect, enable it to lead a more virtuous life, more happy life, and to lead that human beings then have to learn or develop for themselves what is good, what is desirable, what is moral for them to do, and the source of such morality or desire is not based on religion or any other things in Enlightenment thought, but on human reason itself. So, the codes of morality then therefore applies only to the human being, not to the beast or other species on the earth. They are driven by their desire or passion alone. It is the human being who have the capacity to reason, and this is the capacity to reason that tells them the distinction between actions or behaviors that is morally justified and actions and behavior that is morally unjustified. So, they have this intuitive sense of morality and ethics, and therefore, the moral laws and moral codes are applicable to the human being. So, human being is then not just a rational being who constantly try to actualize himself in isolation of society or in or from the society or community. Individual as a rational agent or a rational being is also a moral agent, having a sense of good and bad, desirable or undesirable, just and unjust. And therefore, human being could not avoid the moral questions and dilemmas that we face in our practical everyday life. So, the question that we face every day is the moral dilemmas, and moral philosophy tells us how to overcome those dilemmas, how to perfect our action according to the moral codes, and what should be the source of that moral code. So, the question is, what should be the codes of morality that would guide our practical life? What should be its source? So, for a very long time, religion or religious treatises used to provide that set of codes through which human being perfect or correct their behavior or actions in the society towards themselves, towards their family, towards the society, towards the state. A lot of moral codes was enshrined in the religious text. But with the Enlightenment, you have a new modes of thinking where human beings for themselves, regarded as a rational agent, would decide for themselves what is moral code, or what is the sense of duty towards which they have the obligation. So, as we have discussed in the theory of political obligation with the social contract traditions, that human beings themselves consent to a particular form of authority, and then the moral obligation or the political obligation they have is based on their consent, and it not on any divine right theory or any religious prescription. They obey certain commands or certain rules and certain forms of authority. So, the question with the moral philosophy is what should be the codes of morality that should guide the practical life, what should be its source, and who should formulate it. It is the society, community, or the religious text, or the preachers, or the individual themselves. In the Kant, we see that he formulate a notion of morality where individual as a free and autonomous being decide for themselves, legislate for themselves what is the duty or what is their sense of morality to which they should subject their life and perfect their life in a way. So, in the groundwork, Kant provides a kind of deontological and categorical account of our fundamental moral obligation or duty towards the self and others in the society. And moral philosophy seeks to identify and realize the ultimate end or the highest good possible to accomplish by human beings. And human beings, as you know in many other writings, have the capability to behave like a beast and also to perfect his or her life, to lead a dignified life or a respected life by following certain codes of morality that they themselves legislate using their own reason, and then constantly tries to perfect their lives. Let us think of it in this way. Human beings are also sensuous beings. They have their desire and passion, and those desire and passion may not necessarily lead to moral behavior or moral action, and yet human beings has innate search for something ultimate, something that is permanent, something that is the source of ultimate peace or satisfaction. In Kant, you have the response that human beings, when he or she uses his own reason or rational faculty, only then he is capable to guide his life and his relationship with others according to a moral laws that will give them a sense of obligation or a sense of duty to which they must perform their actions or subject their action to rational basis, which would enable the human being to realize his true or the highest possible potentialities in life. So, it requires moral virtue with complete happiness. So, we will discuss when we will discuss this categorical imperative and hypothetical imperative. That means some actions may give us immediate satisfaction, but in the long term it has devastating consequences. But there are certain codes which leads us to behave and act in a manner which would have a kind of permanent peaceful consequences or enable the condition of life which would be everlastingly happy or a kind of perpetual peace, a kind of constant happiness possible when we try to lead a life of happiness by combining it with virtue. And there is that combination of then human reason and rationality, and reason and rationality in itself is not sufficient. It must subject itself to a set of codes or morality which individuals themselves then legislate or define. So, thus moral philosophy sets out to first identify what is goodwill obligation, duty towards the self and others.